Hi, Gloriana. How you doing? Thank you very much for your submission here. Rigoberta Menchu, great choice. Good stuff. Let's go ahead and jump right over to your presentation, but I've got that right here. Okay, so now I'm going to go through this real quick, and then I'm going to start making some comments, and I'm also going to show you a couple of areas in the LMS in the classroom that I want you to concentrate on as we move through this project. So the first thing I want to do is take a look at your presentation as compared to the requirements here. And this is where I'm at. I'm on the week 5 final project part 1 instructions page. Okay, so what I'm going to do is address right now this and also this milestone, what's due this week. So this week we have researcher laureate provide their name, which you have, biography paragraphs, which you have, photo, which you have, and dates and events of your timeline, which you have, and then it asks for several thumbnails, which you have. So that's great. Good job. You're set up for success here. You've included all of the requirements for this initial preliminary stage of the project. So all we have to do now is take a look at the instructions, and I'll be addressing this as I look at your sketches. Great job. That's a good bio image, and you're right, and she's known for that traditional Guatemalan dress with the textiles and patterns. So that's fantastic, and I'll talk about that again in just one second. But the bio information is fantastic. Timeline, great job. Just a nice, great amount of information for the timeline. You don't want too much information because it's going to be really difficult to compile and format the timeline, but you don't want too little either. So I think this is really good here. Then we have our inspiration, which is fantastic. So what you're saying is that you're inspired to create your meaning and your visual correspondence based on your Nobel laureate, and then also the fact that she's known to wear this traditional Guatemalan garb, and then also creating your meaning based on this traditional textile techniques. So that's good stuff. But at this point, I want to mention something. And I'm okay with you moving forward. I'm perfectly fine with you moving forward in this direction. But in a real setting, in this preliminary fact-finding phases of any given project, I think it would be reasonable to say that you would probably be expected to come up with more conceptual development. So you've got your concept based on textiles, and that's wonderful. But what in a professional setting, an art director would probably want to see a couple other concepts. So maybe this is your concept, and these are your sketches based on the textile concept. Another concept would be whatever the concept is, and these are the sketches based on that concept. Do you see what I'm saying? And I just want to mention that, but I mean, this is great to move forward in this direction. I think it's a good play. I really do. All right, so a couple of things we want to look at. Now in the front of the poster, what you're doing here is creating these textiles. There's these patterns. So these are typographic solutions, and I am referring specifically to the first set of instructions. So you're going to announce who the laureate is through some typographic presentation. And then also I want you to look at number 4 too, because that requires a tagline be included on the front of the poster. So we need a tagline here. Okay, we need one there, here, here, and here. So none of the front of your posters have this tagline associated with it, okay? We'll need that for your final presentation Sunday. Now, one of the things I would say is this. Now, we really need to create meaning and messaging typographically. So as you see in the instructions, there's no photographic imagery allowed on the front of the poster. And I would go as far as saying don't include any illustrations. And this I would consider to be an illustration. Now, I know you lifted this from the example, right? But we have to work this typographically. So it's not going to be enough because basically what you're doing is you're creating your ties by these visual illustrative elements instead of creating these ties typographically. And I'll show you more about what I'm talking about when I show you some examples. But keep that in mind. That's important. Okay, this is really interesting, and this would work because what you're doing here is you're creating. This looks like it's kind of the loom or how these threads come out to create the patterns, but you've included the name typographically within that illustration. So that's perfect, right? And then this one, again, it's typographically where you're working the concept in, so this would be a typographic solution. This would be okay. Let's jump to the back of the posters. My question here is why the slanted is this going back to the textiles, to this kind of thing here? And if so, what's tying this together with this? Do you see what I'm saying? They seem to be coming from two different images. So keep that in mind, all right? You got to have these very, very tight conceptual and visual ties between the front and the back of the poster in order for this visual correspondence to be effective. Second poster, yeah. Now the second poster, yes. So if we get this worked in typographically somehow, and then we get your tagline in there, then once you've successfully taken this and transposed it and continued it onto the back to create your timeline, that's good stuff, right? This one I'm not sure about. I'm not sure what this is. This seems like to be threads coming out of a loom. But then, I mean, which is kind of a neat concept, but now you're saying you're kind of changing meaning a little bit and you're creating these connections with Roberta Menchú with textiles and looming and the textile industry as opposed to connecting her with peace, which is what the Nobel Prize was for. Do you follow what I'm saying? So really, really think about this and kick back and think about this, okay? Because to a very high degree, the conceptual ties that we create here and the visual correspondence we create here is going to dictate the success of this poster. And I'll show you some examples in a second to tie this whole thing together. At this point, I would say you please feel free. Well, first of all, for your submission for Sunday, just go ahead and make the changes and add labels and descriptions so everything here is really crystal clear as to what's going on. Okay, and then at that point, I would say, please feel free to continue in the direction you feel has the most potential, right? Okay, now at this point, I want to show you. I wanted to share a couple of areas in the classroom that I think that you should really concentrate your efforts before doing any more work on this project. The first one is this area right here. This is week 5 presentation. Read through it. It's a great presentation, but I really want to draw your attention. This is a good example here. Really want to draw your attention to this right here. These techniques right here are all demonstrated in this little graphic right here. But make sure you click the I button, and the I button is not. It's one description here for all of the examples. So you kind of have to look at the example, then go over here and jump over to the top and find out which one corresponds to the example. Then you will come back, turn that off, go to the next example, take a look at it, and then come and find how that is described here in these techniques. Okay, now at that point, so the examples here are fantastic too. Really, really good stuff. All right, at that point, I would recommend that you go over to the announcements area. And in the announcements area, we have some more wonderful examples of this visual technique, visual correspondence using these techniques that we covered in the lecture. So take a look at those and don't just look at these, think about them, really study them and think about them and think about what they're doing and the message they're delivering. Okay. At that point, at the bottom of this announcement, I've got some really good examples, and I just want to kind of go through these real quickly. So the first one is using this little illustrative technique to substitute the O in Tony, all right? And then this, of course, has a lot of meaning, right? But that we take this kind of concept here and we move it over to the back of the poster and we create the timeline from that. So that's cool stuff. This one kind of reminds me of your technique or your concept here, but this is, in this poster, we see this kind of pattern on the front of the poster, and it's incorporated typographically. Then we jump to the back of the poster, we see that pattern again, and it's not till we jump to the image, or if we jump to the image first and we come over here and see this pattern, we kind of put things together and say, okay, wait a second, this pattern is from the colorful, a Pakistani traditional dress and the textile. So this is a lot like your concept. So I think you'll find this one to be particularly interesting. The last one is one of my favorites, and this is the substitution as its fine at its finest, where we substitute the E for the equality sign. And that's just wonderful stuff right there, because it creates this meaning of Martin Luther King ties to equality, right? And it also acts as an E. So this is good stuff here. And then to take it a step further, this designer has elected to use the equality sign to construct the timeline on the back of the poster. Good stuff, you got to admit, right? Okay, so at this point, go ahead and really think about this. Watch this video and watch it again if you have to, and really get these concepts and principles locked in. Then start thinking about how you want to move forward. Okay. Now I told you I was going to talk about this. I think that's a good bio image. However, I'm not real sure the ties are going to be connected unless we have an example of how, so we'd have to have an example. So we would have to be able to connect these textile patterns that you're using in your concept with the bio image in order for it to make sense. Do you see what I'm saying? Otherwise, it won't make sense. So to try to use an image that has some sort of a pattern or some sort of an area that you can use. Okay, this is a really busy floral. So I'm not sure if this is the appropriate image for your bio image. I hope that makes sense. Let me know if it doesn't. But at any rate, at this point, yeah. So let's just go ahead and recompose your sketch of, so to include all of the requirements that I mentioned at the beginning of this video, and then go ahead and start thinking about how you want to move forward with the project. All right, great job. Thank you very much. If you have any questions at all, please let me know. Thanks, Gloriana.